So two things I love, new movies and coffee. So let's dive into this new release from Second Sight Films. This is Prano Bailey Bones' Censor. Got a list of all the extras, but we'll get into that later on. Let's just have a look immediately at this package. Ooh, it's a nice image in the back. Just free it from its confines. Again, typical hard case. We have the movie. We have some art cards, and we have a rather thick book. The contents are listed here. Censor's British origins, The Blood-Splattered Sister, Enid Baines Burns in Hell, Censor in The Final Girl, Production Gallery, Keep Telling Yourself It's Only a Movie, Mythology, Moral Panic and Blame During the Video Nasties Scandal by Kat Illinger, and Age of the Nasties, A View from the Shop Floor. This seems to have a wealth of information as well as images from the movie and production stills. It's got some of the posters and a wealth of information that looks rather intriguing, something that will be fun to get into. The disc itself, so there is 2 discs within this. We'll go through some of the content on them when I do the actual review of the disc itself. Let's have a look at some of these art cards as well. Another pretty rammed disc, as you would expect. I am looking to get into these extras to see what's on it. Of course, join me as we jump in and have a look. But first, coffee. Censor from Second Sight Films truly is a remarkable package. We'll talk about the extras later on, but just now I want to talk about this wonderful movie. A movie that is steeped within the 80s video nasty culture, but has a rich thematic of dealing with trauma throughout it. We are thrust into this movie as we meet Enid, our main character, a censor who looks through all this slew of material that's coming and decides what is fit for public consumption and what should be cut. And everything takes a swift turn when she watches a movie by Frederick North, a notorious low-budget horror director. And this story strikes a chord. This seems to have a lot of Enid's memories in it. It harkens back to a time when her sister suddenly vanished. They were in the woods and something happened. And she starts to wonder if art is imitating life, or is life now imitating art, and starts to wonder whether this is real memories, whether it's forced memories, whether things are coming back to her now about the time that her sister disappeared. And it's all about that trauma of not knowing, of having that someone that's ripped from your life, and slowly going down a rabbit hole of these horrific movies and starting to see them less objectively than she first did, and more into reading far more into them than she first did, going down that rabbit hole that leads to some horrific and bloody places. And I think the key to this is both the amazing performance and the wonderful direction, and it really does capture the mood and the aesthetics of a lot of those 80s horror movies, whether it be simple things with the framing of movies, cropping it later on in the movie, whether it shows you the unravelling nature of the character, whether it uses the giallo lighting in some of the more nightmarish sequences. It's all used for wonderful effect, and it creates a kind of startling image between these people who are charged with looking after our moral grounds and people who may not be the most apt to judge such fare. I think Censor is a remarkably good movie. It's one that holds up to rewatches and has a strong thematic all the way through it that's really hammered home throughout the performances, throughout the tale, and the way it's delivered. It comes to a kind of rousing finale that can leave you wondering, why is it going this way? But the breadcrumbs are all there. And it's one of those movies that is good on a first watch and gets better and more layered as you start to pick apart certain scenes and certain phrases and sentences that are delivered throughout the movie that allude to the grander picture that we have on show here. I think there's a remarkably deft touch within the directing here. Someone who knows exactly what she wants to do and sets about it in such a fantastic manner. There is a lead performance which is just absolutely outstanding, but we get some other fantastic turns as well from various people that pop up. There are an interesting tact with this one, just before I finish up talking about the movie, is the fact that it's all about video nasties. You have this idea of where the movie is going to lead, but you don't see anything bloody or gory for a good hour into this one. In fact, it's not a movie that really revels in its own sense of overpowering gore. It's actually more an atmospheric piece that really gets to the heart of the tale it's telling. I think Censor is fantastic. I really had a lot of fun with the movie. It was one that I enjoyed in first watch. I appreciate more on a second watch, and I actually look forward to going back and seeing it once more to see if there's more to pick apart from it. That being said, let's jump into this ridiculously stacked disc that Second Sight Films have prepared for us. So here we are in disc 1 of the Censor from Second Sights. If we go along to the extras, you'll see that there are 3 commentaries here. The first one by Prano Bailey Bond and Kim Newman. The second one by Prano Bailey Bond, director of photography Anika Summerson, editor Mark Towns, and sound designer Tim Harrison. And third, we have Kat Ellinger, Lindsay Hallam, and Miranda Corcoran. Next, we have Nasty, a short film by Prano Bailey Bond. This, just under 16 minutes, is a really captivating short film, one that just grabs you straight away, set in the 80s with a disappearance of a father and an abundance of video nasty tapes. Won't tell you any more, but it's really worth checking out. Next up, we have The Making of Censor, which is 21 minutes, which is really condensed, packs a lot of information, a lot of talking heads, and is really quite engaging and fun to watch. Next up, we have My Nasty Memories, which is just under 28 minutes, and is basically David Gregory, the owner of Severance, talking about video nasties, and he refers quite a lot to his documentary Ban the Sadist, which is also on this. Now we have it in 2 parts. Part 1 is 50 minutes, part 2 is 43 minutes. If you know a lot about video nasties in general, there's not a great deal of additional information here. Still, it's very interesting. It does cover a lot of the bases. If you don't know any of it, you'll find it fairly eye-opening. And if you did live through it and you do know most of it, it's still fun to just look back, shake your head in disagreement and what the heck was going on. So let's jump into disc 2. Okay, so here we are into disc 2. First up, we have My Own Nasty, an interview with Prano Bailey Bond as a talking head at 30 minutes, just talking about how she began making short films, the idea of Censor, getting it together and getting it in front of the cameras. Next up, we have an interview with Enid, the main character, the Censor. This is just 22 minutes in length. I kind of like that she's wearing a t-shirt with the director's name on it as well. She's talking about how they met up, how they got the role, and basically going into production and ideas about the movie. Next up, we have Penning a Nasty, an interview with co-writer Anthony Fletcher. This is 12 minutes in length and just talking about how they worked on some shorts, the ideas for Censor, the kind of thematics they were trying to cover. Nasty Images, an interview with Anika Summerson, is the director of photography, and this is 18 minutes in length, again talking about how they met, university, how they started working together, their filming of the short nasty and how that influenced the look of Censor. I'm Cutting It interview with editor Mark Towns, which is 13 minutes, and this is quite fun because he's obviously a huge fan of horror movies and was in his element and just kind of loves talking about it. In fact, that actually brings up some information about cutting a whole character and subplot from the movie. Next up, we've got Nasty Sounds with the composer, which is basically 11 minutes, and she's going into all kinds of things, particularly how she uses synth quite a lot as this main driving force of the movie. Then we have a video essay by Alexandra Heller Nicholas, which is Enid's Gaze, which is really quite informative. I won't go into too much, but it does focus on a particular conversation and how that gives you an insight to the whole thematic and idea of the movie itself, which is an interesting take, and I really quite like it. Next up, we have a screening Q&A, which is 14 minutes, which is just, if you've seen one Q&A, you kind of know what roughly is involved. Next up, we've got an oddity, which is Pranell Bailey Bond in conversation with BBFC compliance officer David Hyman. 40 minutes, conversation about how he started working at the BBFC, the idea of the job, the movie itself, and how that kind of mirrors some aspects of his job. And next up we have Deleted Scenes, which is just under 3 minutes and is mainly focusing on the journalist character that was cut out of the movie. So there we have it, the first sort of big release from Second Sight Films this year. Censor is a fantastic film. It's given a package that really delves into the history. 2 discs rammed with content, 3 commentaries, all those extras, the documentary on video nasties. If you're a fan of that era of film, this is an essential pickup for you. I know it's going to take pride of place in my collection, not only a good film, but as something that looks back to those wild and wacky days of the video nasties. I think Second Sight Films have went above and beyond with this release, and it's highly recommended. I'd love to know your thoughts on the movie, the package, whether you're getting it or not. Let me know in the comment box below. As always, there's more content up here if you want to see more of my stuff. And if you think about clicking that little like button just below this screen, that would be amazing. All kinds of wonderful things happen when you click that like button. And you can join the Patreon or the membership program for as little as 99p a month, which helps this channel run and the reviews to keep coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.